Success Capital organization, in partnership with the AIDS Foundation South Africa, brings you a dialogue on the social determinants to unsafe abortion in Botswana. And today, with this segment, we will be exploring the role of men in unsafe abortion. And we have a few perspectives that will add flavor to the discussions we've been having. I have with me Untusise, who is a creative, an artist. I have Abel, who is a midwife. And I have Jane, who is a paralegal. And so, I will start with Jane, maybe to share your perspective on what you think is the role of men in unsafe abortion. Mo Botswana.
Hello, Batswana. Kibiswa Jane is a paralegal. A man more unsafe abortion. A role of a man on a unsafe abortion. What's trying to go her and le impact mo go tlhokomeleng ngwana gore a ba nne le tšhono e kalokalo ya go tsaya dithata tsa gore ga a imisitse motho a nne le that impact le motho a mo imisitseng ba tseye ba tseye that responsibility ya go tlhokomela bana thata because ga ke le mme ke le FSW how re o ba ke ngang kimisitse then a ba sa tse a role ya go ntlhokomela ke a go tsaya tshwetso e leng gore ga ya siama e leng gore e go end up ke dirang abortion e leng gore e unsafe.
Thank you, Jane. And I think, what you're speaking about, it even illuminates or highlights the fact that in many instances of unsafe abortion, men are the reason who actually lead women to go and get it.
Yes.
If it's not in terms of absence or not being there, they're the ones who suggest hore. So my question then to Ntusise is, why do you think it's important for us to hold men accountable in terms of unsafe abortions that are occurring in Botswana today?
No, anga go important gore re banna ke bone ba ba dirileng gore mosadi a committee abortion. Nanga go elela mo khanya gore tota ro thirika re le couple wa ba re tlhaloganya se re se dirang ka nako e re se dirang ka yo. Because most of the times se gone tela bro re kopana ngo go dibare e le gone go kopana ngo le gone go nolwe e bile ga tsamaya go kopana go itwa yona unsafe sex. Wantswa e bile go no po botsang kae ha ke tshwe ke re mosadi kana monna ke ba toro nthaloganye go no ga go botse sepe ka yona condom kana kae e bile re takanela du ka re bile gape go re sa itsana go kopane gone mo bosikong jo go re ntheketse di drink e bile ya no kina le we ra tswa ra tsamaya ra go kopanela diko ha re sena go kopanela diko mo deke gone bile mosadi a tata le mo go kana re yo ke sa mo itse o nkimisitse o mmona kae le kopana kae le kopane kae go thabisa le tsone dito a ke tsuru wa nthaloga. Yes man mo decisions tse dingwe ke sotse ba nna le rona ba nna le sotse re itse gape le gone gore se re se dirang se gone go dira gore go nne le eng ha o simolelo o thakanela dikobo le motho sa mo itse ha re ke ra bua hela ka yona gore mosadi ka nna ireng a nna moimana to an extent ile re go ireng unsafe abortion bona le malwetse mongwe ke one malwetse le re gone go a tsa mo partner le kopana kana go eneng bo go hela but hela banna le bona tsuru ba thaloganya gore responsibility ya bona mo baneng ba le ba sengwa ba itse ba tsene mo latsi la ntshwarela sente se tere ke ra.
Thank you, Ntusise. And I'm very curious now, bringing Abel into the conversation. In your personal opinion, and recognizing, what? Yes, 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 other instances where there's so many other factors that happen. And in as much as we know, yes, you're supposed to have safe sex, in as much as we know, yes, I should be responsible for my body, my safety, and so forth. At the end of the day, life happens. So within that context, what do you think, or who do you think should actually play a role in terms of ensuring someone is safe in an instance when they find out this is an unplanned pregnancy? Because unfortunately, for women, they don't have the choice.
Okay, thank you. I'm Abel Pagi, a nurse midwife, an author. I want to start this conversation by saying humanity is found in the fabric of parameters of joy and sorrow. we are products of decisions we make in this life. What I mean by this is, as males, I usually talk of male involvement, where I speak to a male and say to him, we have to be involved in the care of our children. Either I'm in support or not in support of safe or unsafe abortion. I will want to speak in regard to unsafe abortion and say, we might not be willing or supporting it under certain parameters, but of course legally there are those measures that we do support it. So in the event that a child is conceived, medically we talk of viability as a period after 24 weeks. So before 24 weeks, there's an exception medically to say before 24 weeks, then there's no viability, I mean that there's life. So under those grounds, I will speak and say, no, if the pregnancy is a result of those measures that are listed under the guidance of our policies of this country, then yes, I'll say it's okay. Still, like I've highlighted, that there are instances where theologians will say when you have a baby, she has the right to life. But if at all we choose to label sin and choose not to label it some way, firstly, sex before marriage on its own is a sin. So if we decide to jump the equation and get to a point where we are now talking about a born child and neglect the variables, that what happened before an element of a child being born, that is, a sin occurred there, and another product of a sin occurs again. So I think we are only choosing the part where the end product of a sin committed, because you find that if you are ready mentally, it's really hard for you to think of abortion, because people who abort mostly are those that look into their socio-economic environments, they look into their ill health, they look into things like maybe the readiness. So if at all babies were to be born from a clean site, that is not before marriage, I doubt we'll be seeing the number of abortions, of unsafe abortions. So we are missing a point there. We are missing it from the first point of the equation. And we are hurrying to say, because we have committed a sin, how about the end product? Maybe we should start by saying, what should be done here first? Are we educating people enough? Are we preaching the contraceptives adequately to say, no, prevent this? So still on that context, I want to say, for me, if the baby has been conceived, I will urge men to say, no, support the actions you have done. Because already you have done a mess, so stand for your mess. That's the stand I will take.
Thank you. I'm really inclined to then sort of ask you if, for instance, because we're acknowledging the laws that we have, and this is why Botswana is going to be undergoing a constitutional review, that they are dated, that they come from whether it's 1958 or even better, that they're inherited from colonial laws. We were acknowledging we do not have self-determination, we do not have bodily autonomy. We basically couldn't even exercise agency in our own country if it was someone who was living in the 1930s or 40s. So if, for instance, let's just say, on independence, that the laws actually enabled safe abortion, do you think you would have a very different perspective?
Thank you for the question. If initially the laws allowed for a safe abortion,
yes,
I will somehow stand to support the law and say, because when it is done safely, it's tend to protect even the maternal deaths, the number of deaths that will happen because of unsafe abortion. So I'll stand to say, no, if the laws allow it, then there we are to protect the nation, there we are to protect the girl child or a woman, which I think the bigger picture should be to safeguard the lives of the women. Either she committed an error or not an error. Because after all, life lost is lost, regardless of whether it was an error or intentionally meant. I think it's never intentionally meant to destroy your own life. But you do abortion because you have reasons why you are doing it. And sometimes you find that the law does not favor you. And I'll give an example about countries like South Africa. At one point, I took a uncertified study in Mafikeng to see how many Botswana cross the borders to go and seek for the kind of abortion which is safe on that side. I realized that in their booklet, just taking a cursory look, it was indicative that most Botswana cross the borders. So it shows us that Botswana want, or they feel the law is not on their side in terms of maybe what they want to do with their lives. I don't know if I'm answering you.
I think you really did answer, and actually added a lot of insight. And then, it sort of leads me to Jane to then ask you, for a lot of people, there are many Botswana who are considered not to live within the context of law, or even, theologians' perspectives. And I say this because we're acknowledging what sex work is somehow a gray area, in that in law, yes, sex work is not criminalized, but that the proceeds of crime are criminalized, right? And so we're acknowledging there are people who are not always within the ambit of law, one, in that dimension. And then from an intersectional perspective, we're recognizing what are gender disparities, inequality that women are experiencing. And in many instances, there's income inequality, because we know it's not everyone who can afford to cross over the border. So now my question to you is, for someone who, now we've just identified 3 forms of, if it's not disparities, if it's not inequalities, it's reasons for discrimination, grounds for discrimination. Maybe it's someone who happens to have non-normative sexual orientation, or maybe lesbian. All these 4 are not necessarily always, if it's palatable or legal or acceptable. So how and if someone find themselves pregnant,
tota ke go tsaya tshwetso e sele e leng gore ga ya siama, cause ga go fall pregnant e le gore with someone you don't know, kana gore the pressure e ya go nna gore that person yo go dirileng gore nne pregnant a wa amogetse tiragalo e dirileng yaanong ga a sa amogela, to me it's going to be a lot of pressure, because if it's a sex worker o batla madi. If it's a lesbian, maybe kana lesbian o kgona go ta wa itse go na le ba bye. So ha ngwe maybe o na le family out there wa go nna le a pressure. So ha go ntsalo wa go nna le a lot of pressure, and unsafe abortion ya go nna teng
And so with that context, people tend to turn to music, people tend to art, because they can escape all these different troubles that we've been listing. So I'm really curious on whether, and let me say this because I'm saying it from a context, whether it was in liberation struggles or whether it was in human rights abuses, you found that artists were quite key in conveying the message of struggles. So please tell me, because we've had a lot of difficulty, trying to find female artists, number 1. And number 2, recognizing about the role that men play within the context of whether be it a courtship, sexual intercourse, and even leading to a point of having to decide whether now someone needs an abortion. Why do you think that our arts, are not helping in drive home the message? Or better yet, why are they not reflecting the realities of whether there's unsafe abortion? There are elements of violence that lead to unsafe abortion. There are elements of poverty leading to unsafe abortion. Because I guess that's what art is supposed to reflect, the tone of the country. So why do you think that there's such a huge gap, even though all of us turn to art, not just to express ourselves, but even in instances where we want to escape from matataron?
One of the situations in the channel is, before like it mo di artist gore why ba sa tlhaloganya gore batho ba rutiwe ka dutse go simula hela le ka wena as an individual o le artist o tlhaloganya gore tota go diragala mo mo le hatseng kana mo serendu yo tshelela mo gone so se bona artist usually na se ke se ke se tlhaloganya ba opela ka dilo tse ba di bo yana mo ngwela di artist dingwe mo tata ba opela ka gore pina me e nne monate e ratwe ke batho ba le bantsi yana be bo ipotsa pele gore pina ga go ha o opela ka molaetsa o opela ka gore bomme ba ntse ba ithokomela mo di situation tsa gore ba hele ba ya go abona ba hele ba ya go dira borre ba ntse ba ithokomela mo go tsene mo di situation tsa hele tse gore mosadi hela ya go commit abortion ntateng yana mme a e dira e le pina gore go a ke itse ka go nna thata mo go ene gore a gone go dira pina eo be nna monate mo ata tola go opela something se le bana ba ta tola ba ta dina ba ta wa ntshwa so marimi ke yone kgang ya gore le rona ba re ta ba re ntse re ruta sometimes we should take gore re tshotse re bona ra ke re go na le gap mo botswane ya di artist a re tseng di artist tse re kopane le tsone di rutwe ka dilo tse le gore ba di ribetse ba di lebetse hatho wa ntshwara ke raya gore before tata re go na le gap mo di artist a re thokomele di artist di bolelelwe gore hela kana dipina di dile di tsidika me ga gona pina e le gore kana gore ba tata ba go opela ka HIV ke a go tilo go ona go na le madi re batla gore toto before ya go opela ya go simolola go bua pele gore MCP jana ba create wa bona me ba gona go create dipina o yana o di create le ha sentsano a ditso go hela 100,000 ke yo rap jana re batla re tsa mo torite batho ka MCP o ta go ntshetsa pina engwe monate mo le gore ka sa lo beno e potsa ke nantsa science ola lo o tsa bona ba ipabeletse deng ba dira ha se re mo tsetswa tender go to dira ja yana ga engwe ke tareng ke tsena ke chipaini mo khanya ne mitsitsi bua ona le situation engwe le gore lona ra ile bana ela gore batho o bona situation ya adult child communication ya batsadi le bana from bonyane ba ntse ba gola bona gore a ke itse a go dirwa ke gore batsadi ba bangwe ba ile gore ba gongwe ke se re ka ra gore kana ke a utshula kana wa bona situation go khona tela mo di family tse le batsadi ba itshuletse these are the most people ba ile ba khona go communicate le bana ba bona gore ngwana la se tsari ja piwa batho ba bona ngwana wa bona go godile wa mmolella ngwana kana bila se go dilana go bona so se tsoro o sabe 1 2 3 gore ha mo rutwetse gore no yaanong gore ha mo kganele hela go tswela konte ka nako go sa balla ko wa mmolelela gore jaanong kana go dira o ka bona le wa go simolola gore o thakana le go tsena ngwana ha o ka bona gore yana tsa male ditsela tsa go lentse le go ga lira kana o yana tsena mo peer pressure influence ngwana a itsa mo ngwane mo yana di family tse di kota sitse ga bana le yone nako ya go thola re ka bua le ngwana kae mme ke bona batho ba ile gore ba strict mo ngwaneng sa go kitana ke gore ngwana a tswa kotsa ka bosigo wa jampe mme ha mo le ke a mo jampe ngwana o se ka ba tswa ka nako ya gore ga ya heletse conversation ya isimolula o itela ga tleng ngwana go takai kampa tshane ngwana go rileng ka ngwana le go bitsore ke yana ngwana ta ba ngwana a nne haji wa timwa dijo ngwana ka no mima gore ana ta gone go ja mo lapeng ke ga ra ireja kana bile go simulela itse mmago gore kana mmago le ra go batho ba kwana ha batho gore a bone mpa ile kare be ba le mo ba simula ba tsena ka thoko wa botsa mo ba batona ba le ba ile re kwa kile ba mo lo re la wena o se ka ba re le ile mmago ka le bogale ka tera go ka wena o ka bolewa ke batho so wa go bona re dira jang gore o kgone go tsena mo lapeng di ngwana a tsena ka ba kana bile a se re bona ba simula ba gore bile le go ngwana no wa ka nyoro monya wa tsena gone go dingakeng tse le gore go tsene ba mo ruta tse dingwe tse di makatsa ngwana o ta dirwa ditori gantnyana bone ba re tshaba go lapeng ngwana o tlhokaetse go tele ngwana eno botsadi jone jaaka go jone bone o nna bo mmawa ke gona bole mo ga gore hela re ntse re sa gone go irana bona re ngwana re lusitse ngwana tete ya go mo didimalela go mo manya go sa tsenya mo dipointeng tse le di a diragala mo selong na re re se ka ba tswa bosigo go se ka ba retela kwana bota o nole wa bona so ya ba mo ruta ela gore no a go nne jana le jana
yaanong I'm very curious gore yaanong because I assume gore o ntse o bua ka the girl child yaanong ke ipotsa gore yaanong ngwana wa mosimane ga nka kgalemela ngwana wa mosimane ga nka bolelelwa tsone dikgang tse gore a se ka emisa ngwana o mongwe
ke yone kgang ke bua ka yone ga ke bua yana ke itse gore kana ha re bua mo di family ha ke ngwana mo setsa le ene wa mosimane le o ba tshaba go mo kgalemela over ya go bui bisente totally sa go ke gone gore a se ka ba le ka go ireng metokwane a se ka a nke tere le batla gore a ne ngwana wa gone go imisa kana bone wa tswa go rena ke re adult child communication I cannot specifically refer gore ngwa mo setsana hela both go tse dire go bua le bone both a ke ba go la both wa mosimane o tswela konte kwa blang ba tsena mo di ha ba se nna ba tswa go go tsena mo FS ba tsena ba okopa le bana ba bangwe ba ba tswang kae ko di-background tse di sa tshwaneng ko ena a tswang teng o etse mo ithuta sengwane wa itse go mpe kwana re simile o juluka le ke nna lone o tswa molapo ko nna a tshwereng cash Saturday re spenda nako ntse re na le ibile go kopana le banya ene le a tswa ko primary le ko junior kwa go kitchen la mana ba sa dire dotse ba dalo mo sinare simile o ithuta dotse ngwe tse le gore he ya no ga iwa go sameki ga nna le bile o imisitse wa mosetsana o imi.
Thank you very much, Untusise. And I think, this leads to my next question. Abel, as a midwife, you have then also experienced, I'm not sure if it was there at the time, but comprehensive sex education at high school. And similarly, that I assume even in your curricula, there were certain elements of family planning and so forth. I mean, all of these things were there. Do you feel like at all those different levels, that education is enough? In as much as, yes, we highlighted the importance of parents' roles in educating their children. We're acknowledging, Hela, sometimes there can be shortcomings with parents, especially in the context of intergenerational harm, intergenerational violence, in instances where maybe you were not taught everything, even you as a parent, such that you can be able to then pass on to your child. So do you feel like we're educating all our children enough in the context of safe sex, in the context of family planning, in the context of sex education? Because I know there can be significant limitations because of religion and morality.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, let me make it clear or elucidate this point. As much as we have respect to the Bible, which is the first book that guides us, I somehow feel maybe we are not doing enough in terms of health education. Sex on its own is not just meant to have babies. You can have sex for fun or for joy. So let us not only talk about sex like it's something we have when we want babies. We can have sex as for recreation or for fun.
Pleasure.
This way. So in the event that we are having sex for fun, what is there in place that we can use? Then we are jumping to contraceptives now to say, in the event that now your seduction, you can't control your appetite, there you have contraceptives to use. Then now it drives me to a point where I would say, are those contraceptives user-friendly? Because we might all know about condoms. We might all know about loops, implants, and all those different kind of contraceptives. But are they user-friendly? One woman there will tell you that I used the Depo, I had my periods the whole month. That on its own then says to her, forget about this. So the education might be there. I think everyone here knows a condom. So is that condom, because even that condom is not 100%. What are we saying about that person who does sex for fun and then in that process, she's pregnant? Are we saying it's up to you? Are we saying you chose to neglect the Bible? While the reality is saying to us, people of a certain age, they have appetite. It's even written that in the science books that at a certain age, when you reach it, you start developing interest. That interest, we mean the interest of intimacy. So are we saying once you feel like being intimate and then the condom or any contraceptive fails you, should you be sentenced to a point where we say, yeah, there you are, feel it, it's here? By that I mean pregnancy now, to say no. Because maybe there was a contraceptive failure and then which led you to now be pregnant. I've seen cases where there are contraceptive failures. Most people, even my friends, have called me to say, hey, yesterday I had a condom bust. So should we just then say men are for it? Or we should be considerate? I'm speaking in those terms because I think somehow we are neglecting that sometimes sex is not only for those who I mean in reality, not as per Bible. The Bible's prescription is quite clear that only those who are married. But I doubt now it's only those who are married. I think even those who are not married and who will never be married are indulging in it. So let's be broad as we address this subject. So health education is there, yes, I can feel it. I can feel that something is being done. But somehow the things, the gadgets that we are using, they are failing the nation. So in the event where the nation is failed by those contraceptives, do we have an alternative? That's the question that we should answer, all of us, at any level, which will then guide us to say, no, let's take this decision. Hear me well, I'm not somehow advocating to say babies should be killed. I'm advocating to say, let's weigh the options. Let's have those people, let's dig deep into the contraceptives that are at our disposal to say, are they saving us adequately? Thank you.
Thank you, Abba. I think then the question that I really want to ask you then is, why then aren't most contraceptives targeting men? Because men can have more babies than women ever can. Men can have more sex, whether for pleasure or for work or for any other kind, more than women. Men don't have to bear the consequences. Yet it seems like most commodities and most that are in research and development are targeting women's bodies.
That question, I once asked it in my years of studying midwifery, to say, why is it that there are only 2 contraceptives that are to be used by men? It's either you cut their tubes or you give them a condom. Those are the most pervasive ones that I know of. So the answer I got from my lectures by then was that if you look at the woman, so woman's makeup, she's the one who those gadgets can tamper with their system with easy. That is to say, they are the ones who sex happens in a woman's body. What a man does is he brings his gadget, the cable, then he connects. So everything then happens in a woman's body. I don't know if you are getting my point there. Most of the whole process, after a man plugs his cable, the whole process now happens in a woman's body. So it's the woman's body that has to be altered, that we have to bring things that will alter the processes taking place in it. For example, the injection, the implant, the tablets, they now have to delay what a man has deposited. That's why you find it that women, they're kind of having to face it all. It's because of their makeup. That is where the alterations happen. For a man, you can't alter anything in me unless you say, give a man a dose that he will not produce semen with sperms. Somehow it might be a deadly exercise. So for a woman, you can say, since sperms will then have to swim, then let's have something that will make those sperms reduce their speed towards reaching the ovum. So that's the point.
So here's my question. Was your lecturer a man? Was your lecturer a man?
No, a lady. It was a lady.
Okay.
She was speaking in a worried tone.
Mm-hmm.
She was worried to say, these things is all unto us as a lady. Mm-hmm. She was worried, I have to admit. Mm-hmm. But she had to clearly state why it is happening that way.
Okay. So I hear you and I fully understand. But like the song says, it's a man's world. I'm sure the person that developed the curriculum was a man. The man who developed the textbook is also a man. A lot of the people who have invested and actually studied and ensured that the science would be working for women's bodies were men. I'm sure the people that made the laws were men. And I'm sure the person that learnt and is now actually helping is a man. So I think for me, now my question really then, to you, Jane, is, since it's a man's world, and since men have always decided to alter women's bodies, we have seen it even with Caster Semenya and some of the rulings that have come out in terms of whether she's allowed to compete and whatnot. Now they want to alter her testosterone levels and so forth. So for me now, my question is, why must you then take these things that were developed by men for men? Because now that's what I'm hearing. All I'm hearing is, oh my goodness, they could possibly die. But I'm sure so many women have died in so many scientific trials. So many women have died like this. spoken about in terms of unsafe abortion. So, kira hela hore a ko mpolella thamma. Then why must women take all these things for the sake of men?
Ke gore rona basadi re dirile ka mokgwa e nngwe e seng. Go gore back then bogologolo re rutile gore mosadi o obamela monna. Whether la how o lapile o le motho a mme gore nnyaa motho a modimo ke lapile la ga ta hela ga re nna ka e bata. You just accept everything. Wa bona ke gore mona kwa gompieno re le basadi a re emeng ka dinao say no gore monna ke ena go tlile mo hile responsibility ya sengwe le sengwe. Wa bona that thing it have to stop ka gore ha re ka ba banna ko pele gore monna ke ena dirang everything mo ke monna it's enough.
So I'm then going to then ask you, Hore, okay, fine. We are now finding ourselves in this situation where people are unfortunately dying. We're finding ourselves in situations where men are not taking responsibility. We've just heard from an education level. We've just heard from a homestead level. We've just heard from a religious level. Even with some of the experiences we've heard from economic, from social, cultural. Because a lot of these things are also, they happen to become wow. So now my question to you at the end of the day is, what is the one key thing that you think is very important, not just for health practitioners, but also even for artists, also for the random person that's walking down on the street, those who work in shops, because they all play a role. And you can't tell me that, well, I don't know, but maybe I'm sure a lot of people are having sex. I'm sure a lot of people are making decisions that aren't always reflective of saying, I've been educated, I know that I need to use a condom and so forth. Especially for individuals who it's their work, right? So that means there's a certain level of expertise and knowledge. What do you think is a key thing that we must take home? What must the listeners take home? Let us help prevent unsafe abortions. Let us prevent unplanned pregnancies. What must the government then do? What do you think?
Now I think the government can legalize abortion because one, it's not safe for us. Whether we plan that pregnancy or not, it will be a safer way to us. More long for it. How to legalize that abortion? I can go hospital. I can go no this and this. Maybe I go with my partner. Cause hardly more sometimes banna they go back because of men they will stand. I will go and say maybe no, don't do this, please.
Thank you so much, Jane. And that's the final word. Success Capital organization, in collaboration with AIDS Foundation South Africa, discussing the social determinants to unsafe abortion in Botswana. My name is Dumiso. Thank you for joining us.